we are going to talk today about another state project board choice that you'll be making. You did one last week and you'll do another this week. So reminder, this is the doc where you want to get all your information. It's called State Project Board Choices 2021. You can simply search that into Google Drive and it'll pop up. We're going to scroll down to the choices. So last week you picked one option. This week you'll be continuing with another. And we'll keep going until we have 4 total, but week by week. Only worry about doing one this week. The one I'm going to model for you is how to make a bar graph showing the average monthly temperatures and precipitation in the state. Before we do that, let's review the steps you're going to follow no matter what choice you make. You make your choice from the list above. Look at the template and any other tips that are in this doc. Do the research using credible sources. Make a first draft in your last name State Project Choices folder. That is important. Always put it in the right folder. I even have a song that says, always move your doc to the right folder. Revise your first draft by asking yourself these questions. Did I read it over, preferably out loud, to be sure all my sentences make sense? Did I pay attention to capitalization and punctuation? Did I give my best effort and take my time? You have an entire week to work on this, so it's going to be really important that you take your time to get it done well. And did I add strong details? If the answers are yes, congratulations, you're ready to move on to another choice. So as I mentioned, I will be modeling the bar graph. Even if you're not choosing that, watch the video so that you can see it as an option, and then you get to decide if it's a good option for you or not. If not, you'll still follow those steps for any other one of these choices, and then the checklist that you'll complete in Seesaw will match pretty closely with those questions I just read to you. Okay, so I made my choice. I'm doing a bar graph. I'm going to look at tips in this doc. So let me scroll down. And here we go. This is the bar graph, and here are the tips about it. Use this link for data on state weather. So I've already given you your credible source. That's where we're going to go. Here's the template that I'm going to be using. Or I could use kind of a lower tech option. I'll show you that later. But I'm actually going to start by clicking on this to share it with you, the weather graph example, so that you can get a sense of what a finished product will look like. So this was a student last year who took her data from Ohio. Now something cool to notice about this is it's not a Google Doc, it's called Google Sheets. And Sheets, you'll see, have a lot of different purposes, but one of them is for graphing. And since we've made this template for you, the graphing part will be pretty straightforward. All the directions are on sheet 1, and it's important to note, I hope you can see it, this might be blocking it, but down here, there are different tabs. So this is actually, I don't know how I can't move that menu, but this is the sheet that I want to focus on. So pay attention, you'll see different tabs at the bottom. You'll click on this one. The first one was just your directions. This one's where you'll actually input your information. The reason I wanted to start with this is just to show you how cool the final product looks. So this is Ohio's average precipitation in inches versus the monthly high and low temperatures. Let me show you what that means. So on the bottom, you see this is called your x-axis, and here it lists all the months in a year from January to December. Okay? And then the y-axis has different numbers in increments of 20, and we're going to use the y-axis to reflect our temperatures as well as our temperatures in degrees Fahrenheit, as well as our precipitation in inches. So what your job will be is to input all your data into this table over here. And then it'll populate it for that month. So this column shows my average precipitation. Let me show you what would happen if I change something. So in January, she said there were 11 inches, right? This is the January precipitation. You can see that month. It says January and shows if I switch this down to 2, Watch what happens to that bar. That's so cool. It will automatically populate it for you and adjust the x-axis. Okay, same for temperature. So let me try to pick a dramatic one. So in July in Ohio, it gets pretty hot. July's average was 80 degrees Fahrenheit. Watch what would happen if I changed this down to 25 degrees Fahrenheit. We know that's not what it is in July, thank goodness. Really cool, right? I'm going to undo that so this graph stays the way it's supposed to look. But once you input your data, the graph will plot it for you. So that's the template we have here, this template. Directions included on the template. So when you open this up, it will force you to make a copy. We're used to that. You're going to be sure you put this in your state project choices folder. So remember, the way we move something is, in a moment, it'll show me the little mini folder up here, and then I can move it. Because right now it's just floating around in your drive. That's not where we want it to be. You hit move, and then you can put it into your correct. I'll borrow Betsy's for a second. So you keep moving it into your correct folder, and then it'll move here. So now you'll have two items in your state project choices. These directions are pretty thorough. They tell you what data you'll need to replace, then you'll need to change your graph title, and then they give you directions on how to print your graph, should you need to. But you don't actually, you can ignore this part because you'll be presenting digitally, so you don't need to worry about that. But replacing the data and changing your title. So again, it's important to know that there are two tabs down here. This gets us into the actual graph. This just has random data. First thing I'm going to want to do is type my state name where it says states, right? So I would type IL, Illinois average precipitation. Now, where you get your data is from this usclimatedata.com website. The tricky thing about this is it will also make you pick a city. So if I pick my state, Illinois, I also have to pick a city. I'm going to suggest you pick your capital or a major city. For Illinois, I'm just going to pick Chicago because that data is most relevant to me. You get to use some freedom here in which city you pick. And if you want to even be more specific in the title of your graph and say which city, you could do that as well. But for our purposes, it's all right to just pretend that the Chicago climate represents all of Illinois. Okay, so now it tells me the average highs, it tells me the average lows, and it tells me the average inches of precipitation. These are to the hundredth place. For our purposes, you can round these to the nearest whole number, right? So in January, 2 inches, February, 2 inches, March, that's going to round up to 3 inches. This one's going to round up to 4 inches, 4 inches, 4 inches, pretty steady. And that tells me January through June. I'd have to look down here for July through December. And actually here, this is kind of basically what you're going to be creating. This one just plots the temperature and it has inches on the other side, whereas yours, you'll see your inches will be a lot lower because we're just using one scale on our y-axis. But that can kind of give you some sense of how your graph should look. And in most climates, you're going to want to see a rise in the temperature in those summer months and a fall back down in the winter. So let's go ahead and input our data. So average precipitation, that's what I was just talking about. All those numbers I was just rounding, that's what I would fill in this column. Then monthly high. Okay, so if I want to get the monthly high for January, I'm going to go back into my tab, find January, average high is 32 degrees. So I would go in here and type in 32. And then I can keep going and fill that all the high temperatures in for all the months. Then I can do the lows, right? Average low in January is 18. So I'll go back in, I'll fill in 18, and then I can fill in all the lows. And then my graph will actually represent Illinois. Now you have to change this title to represent your state as well. Average precipitation inch versus monthly high and low temperatures. You want to say in Illinois, or sometimes you have to triple click on this. Hopefully, let me edit this. Title. Here we go. So the title's down here. So I'm going to call this Illinois, or IL's average precipitation. Okay, and you see how that changes on there. So that now it's representative of my state. Well, not really, because I didn't go through and do all my data, but you will do that. So that's a pretty cool option to get some exposure to how Google Sheets works, as well as represent your climate visually. Another option, if you prefer the low-tech way, you can print out this just blank bar graph, and then you'd be responsible for labeling the months down along your x-axis and labeling the numbers up your y-axis, and then plotting whatever you choose. I would probably, if I were doing this graph, just so that it was really clear, I would print out 2 copies and call one my average high temperatures, and then print out another and call that my average low temperatures. Or sorry, average high and low temperatures could go on one bar graph, and you could make bar graphs or line plots, lots of different options here, but I would probably make a line plot like we just saw of my temperatures to chart those points so you see that cool arc, and then a bar graph of my precipitation. But you get to choose. If you wanted to make a bar graph of high temperatures and a bar graph of low temperatures and then not do precipitation, that's fine with your teachers too, because it says bar graph showing the average monthly high-low temperatures, so that's one choice, and or precipitation. So this is kind of extra. If you do use the Google Sheets template, show all 3, because those are already accounted for in the data columns. Okay, so that's a really fun choice. And then, as I said, you'll go back. You will have made sure it's in the right folder. Always move your doc to the right folder. And then you can revise your draft to make sure you've done everything accurately, given your best effort, taking your time, read it over, made sure there are no typos in there. On a graph, there's not too much to read, but there's a little bit. And then this is similar to the checklist you'll turn in on Seesaw. Once you're done with that choice, you are complete with your social studies assignments until next week, when we'll move on to the next one.